Kim Ang is having a stunning week as Marlins GM. Not only have they got the new skipper in, Skip Schumacher, but also new assistant GM, Ozcampo. Plus, the Dominican Republic international site is now officially open. The Marlins have had a great week, both at home and internationally. Plus, we're going to dig into Lewin Diaz, all on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast with me, of course, Peter Pratt. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK. Don't forget the underscore. No TikToks, no Instas. Too old? If you are listening, hit subscribe. Pods are available pretty much daily, 5 episodes a week in the main. However, those listening will realize and be thinking, Pete, where was Friday's episode and why is there a Saturday episode? Firstly, me and the wife, things got a little bit out of hand on a Friday. I was off work. One cocktail turned into 10. So here we are Saturday morning and I'm feeling ropey, it's fair to say. Nevertheless, hit subscribe to the pod. If you are watching on YouTube, you will see I am looking hungover. And also those listening, there is a YouTube channel. Hit subscribe there. Reminder, it's a daily pod, Locked On Marlins, available everywhere. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This probably will be your first listen because it is going out early on Saturday, particularly for our US listeners. Some may be waking up after having a lie-in, perhaps, with the Philadelphia Phillies taking a 1-game lead in the World Series, and who else but JT Realmuto with a huge home run in the 10th inning. The Phils come all the way back from 5-0 down in that game, taking it 6-5. Stunning win for the Phils. All this talk about offenses are cold because there's too many off days. The offenses look fine. They look fine. So let's put that to bed. Let's go back to the earlier in the postseason. Let's put that to bed. The Braves were just terrible, as were the Dodgers, and they got beat. It is what it is. That's baseball, baby. Nothing wrong with the postseason. Drama is good. And listen, game one, if this is how the World Series is going to play out, this should be a stunner. Absolutely looking forward to it. Of course, as Marlins fans, we continue to feel the pain. We do. We see Realmuto doing what he's doing in huge spots. Oh boy, and we just reflect on what could have been with Sixto Sanchez. Did the Marlins need another pitcher? Did they need one? I'm not sure they did. I mean, there's been a lot of water under the bridge since then, and obviously new guys have come into the organization. Few have emerged, etc. But yeah, this trade continues to haunt the Marlins, as did the Christian Yelich deal. I guess Yelich now has kind of fizzled and flamed, but he had his moment in the sun. And I do wonder, is this Realmuto's moment in the sun where, again, more pain is laid onto us Marlins fans? I don't know. Nevertheless, stunning game one. Let's hope this goes 7. Let's hope it does. I fear for the UK fans, though, however, because, I mean, this was finishing, I think this was like past 5 a.m. UK time. And there was a great event down in London I saw. Chase Utley was there. Chase Utley in attendance down there doing some work, I think, for MLB Europe. So Chase Utley in the mix. UK fans all watching live, and it was past 5 o'clock. Bat flips and nerds putting out videos, people cheering, still drinking pints. Looked wild. Great to see. Great to see. And I hope that continues. But I do fear for the UK fans. That is not sustainable. I can confirm it. 5 a.m., 6 a.m. specials, drinking beer every night. Unsustainable. Those boys are going to be feeling it today. Nevertheless, let's get into this episode specifically. We've already talked plenty about Skip Schumacher and that hire. There were rumors circulating that the Marlins were, I guess, zeroing in on their new assistant GM. It felt like it was inevitable, and finally the news drops that the Marlins have snagged away one of the Astros guys. The Astros obviously playing in the World Series right now, but Ozcampo confirmed as the Marlins assistant GM. And this, on the face of it, feels like a really nice hire for the Marlins, particularly at this moment Yesterday, Friday, the Marlins had their official launch party, let's say, or the ceremony or the opening of their new international complex in the Dominican. Sandy Alcantara there doing, as the main player clearly, and Bruce Sherman was there. There was some table tennis going on. Bruce taking on, I think it was Eddie Cabrera, maybe it was Uri Perez. I can't recall specifically, but nevertheless, it looked a competitive game. Bruce Sherman looked to be enjoying himself. And from a Marlins perspective, that complex is state of the art, no doubt. The Marlins have had success in the Dominican. Clearly, Sandy, the face of that, which is great to see. We're going to talk about another Dominican guy a little bit later on the show, and that's Lewin Diaz and what his future may be with the Marlins. But it's great to see the Marlins investing internationally. It's something that's essential for the Fish. It is. Like, there's too many other teams that have of being able to have a much better track record of these international guys being able to sign and develop these guys. And the Marlins want to create that culture. They want to create a feeling in that region where I want to go to the Marlins complex. I want to be a Marlin and want to join their organization because A, their facilities are amazing, and B, they're a top class organization. That is the aspiration. Yes, the big club has suffered, but the Marlins are putting in all the foundations, all of the groundwork to set themselves up for future success. It feels like, it's very much part of Derek Jeter's vibe, creating a sustainable winner. I think I did see something similar in the wording around the Skip Schumacher hire. So, clearly some of the Derek Jeter, mantra, vision, strategic vision is carrying over here where, the Marlins know that they have to create this conveyor belt of international talent and studs that can feed into the organization and to the big league club eventually. And that's where Ozcampo comes in. He has been credited with, being a big part of what the Astros were able to do internationally. And we look at their rotation right now, and it's just littered with guys that sync back to Oz. I think he's been credited for at least 4 guys on the roster: Framber Valdez, Luis Garcia, Jose Acuidi, Christian Javier. So a lot of pitching. I think he was also involved in the trade for Yordan Alvarez, one of the best players in the game right now. So he has a talent. He has an ability for identifying talent, international talent, and that is critical for the Fish and for Kim to be able to go and get this guy from the Astros that continue to be in a great spot competing. For Kim to go and get this done, I think is sensational from Kim. She's had a great week. You can't look at it any other way. She's got her guy with Skip. And who knows how that plays out, but she's committed. She's, they've seen what they've seen. Bruce has come in. He's given it the green light too. And she's got her guy and got her business done early, let's say, with a guy that maybe people didn't anticipate. Then you go and add to the assistant GM. So it's the third assistant GM with Ozcampo, really focused into the international market. They obviously had their new international scouting guy that was last off season. Now the Dominican complex is open as well. So what a week for the Marlins. What a week in terms of hires. They're getting their business done. They had to because they had so much to get done. But I think this is the perfect timing, not just for Skip, but also for the assistant GM plus the complex opening. All of it ties together absolutely perfectly. And as Marlins fans, you have to be excited for these hires. These are top-level hires. The Cardinals fans didn't want to see Skip go. The Astros guys acknowledge what a nice hire this is. Kim is being lauded for these moves. People are applauding Kim, and she really is starting to shape things now into her team and her organization. That's so important. I think we have to be careful not to knee-jerk judge Kim because of what's happened at the major league level the last couple of years, when the reality is there's still a long hangover from, Derek Jeter and Mike Hill's vibes, I guess. So we need to trust in Kim. We do. This kind of this GM role should be seen as a longer term role, not just a 3-year cycle, but this will be the third year. And if the team has another, 69 win, 70 win season, then the pressure will come on Kim in terms of whether it's a renewable contract. So, yes, you can get the pieces in place right now, but if things start to go sideways again next season, the pressure will come. No doubt about it. It's going to be another topic area to get into as we get through the offseason. And for now, though, it's time to let you guys know about Bet Online. It's our good friends at Bet Online at betonline.net. It's your number one source for betting football. You got basketball, you got the World Series going on. It's all happening right now. Betting at your fingertips via Bet Online. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And Bet Online remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information. They got live betting, up to the minute scores for every sport out there. That includes, of course, the World Series and MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online where the game starts. Love it. Love those graphics too. Great work from Bet Online. So to summarize, Marlins, Kim, great week. Complex is open. Looks stunning. Sandy is the headliner there, but the Marlins players coming in to support that. Bruce Sherman there. Great to see. What a sight. They've added to their front office another well thought of assistant GM that specializes in international talent and trying to spot international talent, both in terms of international free agents, but also in terms of trades and being able to spot talent in other systems that can really help. And that, again, is a huge part for the Marlins. Clearly, as they embark on trying to beef up the major league club, there's going to be trades that have to happen. And, it may not be exactly where Ozcampo's forte specifically fits right now, as they may be targeting guys a little bit higher up in the system, you would imagine. But who knows? Who knows how things go? We will see. Guys, I also wanted to talk about the first base situation. So obviously the site has been announced in the Dominican. One of the Dominican guys that's been playing this year heavily at first base, Lewin Diaz. And this is a tough one. Very tough. Lewin Diaz, firstly, he's 25 now. And you kind of, you forget, you kind of see these guys as prospects and you think, oh, Lewin Diaz is 25? Like he's coming into his prime now, right? He should start to be coming into his prime. Overall, my assessment of Lewin, in terms of what we've seen in 2022, is Lewin. He was given many opportunities at the major league level once the deadline came and went. They committed to him after they moved Jesus Aguilar, and he ended up getting 160 at bats. So a decent chunk of playing time once the deadline came when Aguilar was DFA'd. So the Marlins gave him every chance. Here's the first thing. Glove, sensational. We know that. The glove is wonderful at first base. However, that cannot carry him at all. Even the glove at shortstop for Miguel Rojas, even that can't carry Miguel Rojas in many people's minds. So, yes, shortstop, the defensive, I guess, capability there and what he adds to the team is sizable. At first base, it just isn't as sizable and the value is not as great. So let's call it out right now. The glove is amazing, but you can't base any decisions on that because that alone is not enough. It's not enough at shortstop anymore. And it's certainly not enough at first base. At first base, what do we need? We need power. We need power. No doubt about it. That we have to get the prototypical power from first base. Lewin Diaz this year, 5 home runs. Previous year, I think there was 8 home runs in his previous stint in 2021. And he was definitely hurt by the shift. And I think this is the interesting wrinkle for some of these guys, particularly Blade, Lewin Diaz too, those two in particular that really spring to mind of these Marlins prospects that came up and played. There was so many outs to that guy in shallow right shifting over from third. So many. And when we are looking at players for next year, we do have to have that kind of sight or that eye to the rule changes. The shifting effectively is that type of shifting won't be allowed unless, of course, teams decide actually what we'll do is we'll bring the left fielder over and drop them into shallow right and start to shift the outfield alignment. Could that happen? Because Lewin and JJ Bleday were just getting swallowed up with balls there. Like, it was just constant. These grounders, pretty hard hit grounders, but into that shallow right shift pretty regularly. That's the thing. How do teams adapt to that? Do they start to go for the kind of effectively like, two-man outfield with, then five effective infielders where the left fielder comes across? I'm intrigued to see the way they do it. Some teams, I'm sure, will get creative with it, particularly if you've got pitchers that can, do what they want to do. That really does put the pressure on. I mean, there's a lot of this talk of, guys should be able to beat the shift, be able to go up. Like, it's not as easy as that when guys are throwing 100 with ultra movement on it. I get it. Totally get that. The interesting bit, though, was how Bryce Harper, I mean, he's one of the best players in the game, one of the best hitters in the game, and has been, for the majority of his career. So using Bryce as an example perhaps is a little bit unfair to some of the other guys that maybe don't quite have the ability or talent of Bryce Harper. Nevertheless, there was a good clip on Twitter I saw where it was showing every hit for Bryce Harper in the postseason thus far. So many of them, Bryce is looking to hit opposite field and drive the ball opposite field. Like, it's kind of from a zone perspective, he knows if it's in that zone, that's where he's trying to go. And I think that's so critical and continues to be critical. I'm very intrigued to see, going off on a tangent here, talking about the shift that I didn't expect to. But I think it is important for Lewin Diaz that it does bake into his numbers, that there is a rule change I think would impact him. When we look at his numbers this year, 160 at-bats, 27 hits, 5 home runs, and hitting 169 with Gold Glove defense. Is that enough? No, it isn't. It isn't. What happened with Lewin Diaz this year? What's happened with Lewin Diaz within the Marlins organization in his time here? He was seen as one of the top prospects, I would say. One of the guys that we were most hyped about a few years ago. And it feels like because of the way the roster had been constructed, that Lewin Diaz, his growth was stunted. Coop and Aggie blocked him for multiple years. And Lewin, I don't know, there was that moment where he was forced to drive 9 hours and sit on the bench. I was just like, they're treating this guy like a depth player for the organization. Like, they're not treating him like he's a top 5 organizational prospect. They're not looking after him the way you would expect. That, for me, was a real red flag about the whole relationship and how the Marlins view Lewin Diaz. Maybe they don't rate him as highly as perhaps us as fans do. We see what he does in AAA, and he's hitting bombs galore, and you're like, hey, we could use some of this. But maybe the Marlins were right. Maybe the Major League bat just won't play. And that, in reality, is what we've seen. Like, we haven't really seen anything from Lewin Diaz to suggest that the stick can play in a everyday role. And this is the problem. Like, the Marlins have a real need there now. They've moved on from Aguilar. Garrett Cooper is okay at first base. He's fine, but he's entering his final ARB year, and he ended the year again on the IL. We know Cooper Loop, benefits from spending time DHing. All of a sudden, a position of kind of seeming strength for the Marlins has vanished. It has. Lewin Diaz cannot be trusted to be an everyday starter at first base in 2023. He can't. If the Marlins go into the year with Garrett Cooper and Lewin Diaz in your first base role, I think they've had a poor offseason in that spot. Yes, Coop is okay, but again, with Coop, the power stroke is gone as well. Like, we're going to dig into him next week, and I've been teasing that out for like 2 weeks now. It's pretty wild, but we can't. When other teams, other clubs are getting so much production out of first base, the Marlins can't just sit back and say, hey, 10 home runs from first base is okay. Like, it isn't. There needs to be more power. Cooper, is fine. He's more, again, kind of talking about Brian Anderson the other day. A few more gaps, the average is there, etc., etc. But he's not prototypical, Coop. Lewin Diaz is prototypical in his makeup, but unfortunately, he's not been effective. That's the challenge we face with Lewin. We need to work out with the rule changes. Can Lewin start to get on base more? Can he get the average up? And can the power come back and start to play? Because the power's there, no doubt about it. Like, he's absolutely legit. But again, the Marlins can't do that. So what are they going to do at first base? I actually think they have to go into the free agent market again. And I don't think that's a major risk for them, mainly because you have an expiring deal of Cooper anyway. So you're not going to create the same situation we had a few years ago where you end up like having two dudes trying to split time and it's not optimal. If the Marlins commit to a free agent for, let's say, a 2 or 3 year deal, and let's be honest, their record of free agency recently has been poor. It has. And so it'd be risky. However, I do believe that Josh Bell is the perfect fit for the Marlins at first base. And I'd like to see them enter that race and go and try and make a move there. There's a lot of talk. I say a lot of talk. There's some talk on Twitter. Anthony Rizzo to the Marlins. Could you see it happening? Maybe. There's the hometown kid connection and whatever. I never really believe that, to be honest with you. And I don't see that, it's not, Rizzo's not looking to retire right now. But I could see Rizzo, the Marlins and Rizzo maybe having a conversation, but I do believe that Josh Bell fits the profile better. I do. There's other talks, there's other guys out there maybe. Jose Abreu, I believe, will be a free agent. So there's a few guys out there, and plus there's a few probably, some trade options. There's things to do at first base. And again, the Marlins maybe need to be mindful. They don't want to overly block Jacob Berry in the future. It's possible that Berry ends up transitioning over to first base because, as we've seen, he's clearly not going to be a major leaguer at third base. So it's, can you get a defensive position out of him at first, or do you just put that in the bin and just say, right, he's a full-time DH? I think players need to have a little bit more versatility at that age, particularly as a first rounder, to come out and go, hey, I can't field. Can't field any position. And I think that was one of the hangups when they made the call and that made that selection. But Lewin Diaz, I think, in summary, overall, has either been mismanaged by the Marlins, and I think he has. I also think that the element of him being blocked hasn't helped. He then has been given an opportunity in the major leagues, and I think the rule changes will help him next year. I think that the Marlins cannot stand pat at first base. They have to consider alternatives. I just can't see a Garrett Cooper, Lewin Diaz platoon being the route forward in 2023 if the Marlins can expect to contend. They have to consider upgrades in that spot, a prototypical first base upgrade. I think Josh Bell fits the brief. I think a few others fit the brief. And maybe the long-term future is Jacob Berry at first base or another. We'll wait and see. Overall, it's been a very exciting week for the Marlins. Yes, we're not playing in the World Series. We've got some old friends doing bits in the World Series, which is great to see for some. But from a Marlins perspective, they've got their manager in, new GM, assistant GM, and also the international complex in the Dominican looks wonderful and is officially open. With that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. Saturday's episode of Locked On Marlins. Yes, a bonus episode on Saturday with me hungover to hell. But, of course, it's your host, Peter Pratt. I'll be back next week. Definitely Sean Barrett is back from his trip and his holiday. So Sean's on. We're going to be talking some Garrett Cooper. Also, those were thinking, where's Craig Mish? Well, again, that was my fault from yesterday where cocktails got going. I said to Craig, listen, let's hit the pause button until early next week. I don't want us going off on tangents, me steering a ship with a load of beers on board and getting anyone else blocked. We don't want any more blockings going on. So me and Craig, for certain, will be in next week, early part of next week. And also, we'll kind of talk about the future here of Craig with me on Locked On. There's always a spot for Craig and what it means for swings and misses. Hard to say on Saturday morning. Nevertheless, guys, thanks for joining me today and all of the week. I hope you've enjoyed all of the content, the coverage from a busy week of Marlins activity. I'll be back next week.